Stacy always does the...
Okay, let's go ahead and call to order the work session of the East Grand Forks City Council for Tuesday, August 26, 2025 at 5 p.m. Please turn on your microphones, and would the city clerk please call roll?
Mayor Mark Olseth.
Here.
Council President Ryan Larson.
Here.
Council Vice President Tim Rinkoff.
Here.
Council Member Sammy Schumacher.
Here.
Ben Krushvinsky.
Here.
Dale Holmes.
Here.
Donald Casey.
Here.
Karen Peterson.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Let's move on to item number 1. Consider approving lieutenant promotion and request to fill police investigator. Chief Hedlund.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, before I get into that, I just want to make a correction from last week when I discussed the times for the East Grand Forks Showcase, which is next week, Wednesday, the 3rd of September. For whatever reason, I said 5:30 to 7:30. It's 5 to 7. So it is next Wednesday. I have the date correct, but it's 5 to 7 rather than 5:30 to 7:30. Moving on to the topic for tonight. As I believe you're all aware, we had a retirement this past July. Lieutenant Reid retired from our department. That created an opening in our investigations position, and we're kind of changing that position around quite a bit. It before was almost exclusively investigations. Now it's going to be partially investigations and then also administration. So a little bit more of a true second in command than it was before. We did a promotional process, had 3 applicants, ultimately selected Sergeant Isel Schraga to move forward into this position. So that's your consideration for tonight and then to vote on next week. All 3 applicants did a very good job, and it was a difficult decision, but we did ultimately choose to go with Sergeant Schraga. He is the current commander of the drug task force on a part-time basis, and then a part-time investigator. He's a full-time investigator, but part of his time is spent doing that task force commander position. So that's going to create some shuffling there. He'll have to phase out of that role as the task force commander. And so then we typically have 3 investigators. So this will also now, since he was already in investigations, we still have to fill the opening in investigations. That'll be just a full-time general crimes investigator. We've never limited who can be in those positions, so it could be an officer, could be a corporal, could be a sergeant. So depending on who's ultimately selected, maybe coming back to you again to request a promotional process. For example, if we were to select a sergeant to move into that role, it would be a sergeant and corporal's positions. And then if we were to move a corporal in this position, we'd need to do a corporal's roster to replace that corporal in whatever position they're currently in. So, any questions?
Thank you. Any questions for Chief?
I guess the only question that I would have is, since he was the commander, how does that get selected? Because I know previously talking to Tadman, we were primarily the ones that were taking on that role.
Yeah. Our board will have to make that ultimate decision. The next board meeting is going to be September 18th. Once this has been approved, assuming it is approved, I'll be contacting all the members of our task force board to let them know of the change in our structure, and then we'll be having to determine whether we're going to, who we're going to select to take over as commander. Nick Anderson is one of our corporals who is our full-time task force officer. He is interested. If he were to assume it, he would basically continue as a task force officer, but also have to take on some of those task force commander duties. Of course, he would have Sergeant Schraga, then Lieutenant Schraga to refer to when he needed assistance. And that might be the most seamless, but if there's officers from other agencies that are on the task force, which there very well might be, it could be somebody else that winds up as the task force commander as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Chief Hedlund?
I have a question.
Yes.
So is this interview within, it's an internal process?
The investigator position, yes.
Yeah, so you had a committee or whatever that picked?
Yes.
3 people applied and then, okay, that's all I was wondering.
Just to clarify Tammy's question, there was no external candidates?
We did not open it up to external candidates
Did not
for the lieutenant's position, so we just had our 3 internals.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Any further questions? Okay. Thank you, Chief. Okay, let's move on to item number 2, results of cannabis retail registration drawing. Mr. Huttunen.
All right, thank you, Mr. President, council members. Last Thursday,
afternoon, we did conduct the random selection drawing for the proposed retail registration sites within the community. This turned into a very big lift for our employees. I'd like to just thank all those that were involved in that. In our office upstairs, it ended up kind of having an impact on everybody, but specifically Megan and Renee, Nancy Ellis in the Community Development Office all had a big part of this. We had 74 and 73 registrations received between each of the two zones, the highway and downtown commercial zones. We did complete the drawing in the council chambers and selected a primary applicant for each of the zones as well as an alternate. The alternate would only be used in the event that the primary selection was disqualified for any reason or found to not be able to execute a full license to operate with the state. But they'll be given the opportunity to be able to do that with approval from the council here. I would, at the meeting next week, bring forward basically a preliminary registration approval in a resolution form that would accept the results of the drawing and lay out that pending approval of all of the necessary state requirements and compliance with local ordinance, that once they get their acceptance of a full license from the state, and the required site inspection, site registration process the state has, that they would ultimately be issued the registration allowed by our ordinance. There are still a number of steps left at the state level, some of those that I just detailed, but it's not a quick overnight turnaround to get a site under contract and then have that site reviewed and inspected for compliance with the state. So I would imagine it'd still be some number of months before any of these applicants would be ready to open the full retail dispensary. I'll point out there are a couple of different license types recognized within the state that we had received applications for. The business under the name Red Iris LLC, they were selected in the downtown commercial zone. They are a registered retail license holder at the state level. If you recall the process, that was a license that was limited to no more than 250 in the state, and there was a lottery process at the state level to be selected for that. So that's the full retail endorsement. The micro business license is the category that Skoll MN LLC fell under. They were selected in the highway zone. The micro license, there is and was no cap at the state level, so they basically had to submit an application. Certainly there are requirements to the application at the state level, but assuming they made it through all application requirements, they were issued the micro license. That does require a retail endorsement in order to be able to conduct retail business. Those endorsements, as I understand it, the state has not issued those endorsements yet. It is the preliminary license gives them the micro license title, and there are a number of endorsements: retail endorsement, manufacturer, cultivator type endorsements, delivery service endorsement, all with different requirements at the state level. And so through this now continuing process, they will still have to apply for and prove that they are eligible for a retail endorsement at the state. And assuming that they would achieve that result, then that would be what would allow them to operate the retail operation here in East Grand Forks. So I would open it to any questions if there are any on that process.
Mr. Bakshiminski?
Thank you, Mr. President. Reid, I know we have alternates for this. What happens if, say, Red Iris LLC opens their business and then, for whatever reason, they fail in a year? Mm-hmm. Are we going to then contact the alternate and give them an opportunity, or do we need to restart the whole process again?
That's a fair question. Not one that I have posed in my mind.
Yeah, I just thought of that.
Yeah. That I think we'd need some time to think about and come up with a proper approach to it. There are still a number of questions like that are being raised every day. Off the cuff, I would think at some point we would want this list to expire, but maybe there's a reasonable time frame that would happen within.
Yeah, I don't imagine it's going to fail, but I think it's something that we should prepare for. Or if, say, ownership of that business changes hands, does that entity purchasing that business have to go through all these steps again?
Sure.
So that's the only question I had. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, maybe just some follow-up on the ownership piece of it, and I by no means claim to know all the details, but I do know at the state level even, there are some requirements within the law of the process and the timing in which ownership can be transferred. I don't believe, what I understand of it right now is that ownership cannot be transferred at any point between the license pre-approval and the license becoming active and having the retail operations started. I don't know if there's any additional timing sequence beyond business operation opening, but at least up until that point, I don't believe that there's an opportunity for transfership of ownership or transfer of ownership.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Helms.
Yeah, thank you. Reid, update me again on this. When we started this whole thing and we put that out that we're going to do a lottery, we had something in there about they had to be licensed through the state first before they come to us? Or what now you're saying that they're not totally licensed, so what did they actually have to get before they could come to us and apply for this thing?
Yep. Yeah, good question. So remember, we passed an original ordinance, let's say January of this year, and then we made some amendments to that ordinance in June, July of this year. The original ordinance passed in January. At that time, the state law would not allow for the local community to issue a registration until after they had full licensure from the state. This legislative session, when it was closed in May, there was a change to that law at the state level that allowed for cities to start issuing their local registration on a preliminary license approval from the state. And the reason that they did that is because one of the requirements of getting issued a full license from the state is that potential retail location needs to have the property fully built out, ready for open for business before the state will issue the full license. And in communities like ours, where we limited the number of stores allowed, that created a conflict because no potential business wanted to buy or get under contract to lease a property, invest the capital to renovate it for the purpose of the store, not knowing if they were ever going to get a registration from the city. So to accommodate that, the state flipped the law to say that those cities that are limiting the number of stores allowed could issue registration based on preliminary license approval, which is the way that we followed it. So that was the change in our ordinance in June, July of this year, was to speak to the change to state law and then allow for that registration under the preliminary license approval.
So is there any other cities that you know of around us that went to a just a specific number or amount of licenses they'd give out or anything? Have you heard of anything? Or are we the only ones that did that? Or is everybody else kind of like wide open Wild West thing, type? Or
it's a good question too. I couldn't speak with full confidence in what other cities are doing.
Okay.
I know that other cities and counties did limit the number.
Okay.
Their process that they followed, admittedly, I haven't followed that as closely. The communities that are border cities like ours that border North Dakota, I'm most familiar with what Moorhead is doing and has done. They did not place any limit at all. Okay. So in their situation, it's completely different and opposite than ours in that interested retailers are able to fully buy and outfit a store in anticipation of being given the state license, and there's no limit to the local requirement.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions for Mr. Huttunen? Okay, I see none. All right, thank you. Let's move on to item number 3. Request to move forward with ammonia-based refrigeration system and discuss addition and refrigeration system options. Mr. King.
All right, thank you, Council President, City Council, and Mayor. We have been meeting with the steering committee, and we have 2 virtual guests with us today. We have Meg Marshall and Tanner from JLG here to help answer any questions as we kind of go through this. We had a meeting with JLG and B32, who's our ice plant consultant. We sat through and discussed the different types of refrigeration systems that are available for the VFW arena. After sitting through that presentation, we felt as a steering committee that the ammonia-based plant is the right fit for our community. We came to that conclusion based on the system's overall performance, energy efficiency, long-term maintenance costs, reliability, and the fact that ammonia won't be placed on the EPA cut list. And so with that, we're coming to you today with a recommendation to move forward with design on an ammonia-based plant. JLG has put it together in 3 different options for us. We could do an ammonia-based plant in the existing space that we have now. We could do an ammonia-based plant in the existing space with an addition off to the side of the building that would help add some existing space and change the way we operate the Zamboni and some of the maintenance of the arena. And then option 3 would be an ammonia-based system with the addition, and then have the capacity, if we have the capacity in the future to then tie into the Blue Line arena if we feel that that's the way that we need to go. Probably the first question that you're going to ask is, what is the lifespan of Blue Line Arena and what would that look like tying into it? I'm still working, a lot of this information just came to us in the last couple of days, and we're on a short timeline here trying to get the information out and get it out to design as fast as possible. What we know about the Blue Line Arena is it was built in 2008. It is a open loop synthetic blend system that has brine running through the floors. Typical lifespan on that goes anywhere from 20 to 30 years. So we're in year 17 right now of that. The system is commercially sized, not industrial sized like what we'll have at the VFW arena. The system as we know it now doesn't have to be oversized, and it can work. It can cool that floor with the smaller system just based on the overall temperatures of the building. If you've ever been in there before, you realize that it's pretty chilly in the winter. And so each one of these each one of these options comes with a couple different price points. The first option, doing it in the existing space, and you can see up on the screen here, this is what the existing space would look like. That's option 1. So the Zamboni room and everything would stay in the same. And then if you want to, and that's at a price point of, say, roughly, $3.5 million. And if you'd scroll down to option 2, would be the same space combined with the addition off to that would be on the southeast corner of the building, and that comes at a price point of 3.6. And then for option 3, it's the same with the ability to do an oversized compressor and chiller to eventually tie into the Blue Line Arena. The recommendation at this point from the steering committee would be to go with option 2 with an ad alternate bid, with going for option 3, once we kind of see those numbers and have a little bit more time to research and make sure that that's a viable option before we spend the money to upgrade that system. And I guess with that, I'd open up for any questions.
Thanks, Jeremy. I can go first, and then Mr. Helms. If we went with option 2, and then, a few years down the road, we have to add on to that system to serve the blue line, what does that look like? Like, is there modules or expansion packs?
The chiller and the condenser would be undersized, so that would be, option 2 is a 90-ton system, or if we look at option 3, it's upgraded to a 160-ton system.
Oh, okay.
So we wouldn't have the capacity at that time to make that connection.
So would you add a second, like a
with
70-ton
option
chiller?
3, it would be oversized, and there would still be some work to do. We'd still need to add an additional compressor, an additional pump.
You would, okay. Yeah.
There'd still be some retrofitting to do even with option 3. But the benefits of that would be you'd have one mechanical system that could run both sheets, and then you'd only have to pay to upgrade and safeguard one system, one room, bringing that up to code, instead of trying to do that with an additional system across the street. Other benefits would be if you have an oversized system to start with and it's running just the VFW arena, it wouldn't be working at full capacity, so you'd have some energy cost savings there. When you went to make that tie-in, you would only have to add one compressor instead of having to add 2 compressors into the blue line arena. So you'd add 1 compressor at the VFW. You'd have 3 compressors that would run both sheets. If you do it separately at the blue line arena, you're going to have ultimately 4 compressors. Just adds to maintenance costs, and so there's a lot to kind of unpack and think about, but definitely pros and cons to both options.
Mr. Helms?
Yeah, thank you. Who did you get your information from on the ammonia?
B32 is our consultant that we've been working with.
Okay. Because I've been doing some checking, and ammonia is a hazardous material that you have to deal with. And you have to put different chemicals or stuff into that to keep it. I've been told that ammonia is probably one of the worst ones you can go with right now. The old Ralph, when they had that, they had ammonia in it, and then of course when they built the new one, they went to R22, which they got to be looking at something different now on that also. And it sounds like CO2 is probably maybe the one on the market right now. Thief River Falls just changed to CO2. Sounds like that's maybe the one to go to. It's a little bit, I'll call it safer.
Yeah, we definitely looked into CO2. That was one of the options that was presented to us. It comes with, initially it comes with a higher upfront cost, and it comes with its own set of challenges. A lot of the materials and components of the CO2 system are proprietary to one company, and when you have those, when it's proprietary like that, that's what kind of drives up the cost of it. CO2 will also have to have safeguards if you get a leak or something in the CO2. Obviously, you can change the atmosphere inside the room just as well as you could with an ammonia system. You drop the oxygen down, and then those run at a higher pressure. Those are running at about 3,500 psi. Again, has an opportunity for safety issues inside the plant. So we definitely looked through that. It's newer on the market. It's been in commercial refrigeration for a long time, but really ice plant, it sounds like it's only transferred over here in the last 10 years. So it's still pretty, I would say it's the new kid on the block as far as refrigeration systems go. Felt like as we were going through the conversations, it would be maybe a little bit risky to be one of the first arenas in our region that are going with that type of technology, knowing that ammonia is a really tried and true system. I know the University of Minnesota at the Mariucci just put it in last year. It is a hazardous material. It comes with its own safeguards inside that room. If you look on the design there, you'd have a vestibule, so that when you walk into that vestibule, you'd have a screen that would let you know to make sure the atmosphere is safe to enter the room. If it does get a leak, it has a call-out system. If the leak is higher than 300 parts per million, then it turns on the exhaust fan and it exhausts out into the atmosphere to dilute in the air. If it's over 300 parts per million, then it has a diffuser system in it where it sucks all the air inside this diffusion system and holds it inside the system until the fire department can arrive. And so there's definitely, and I would say that no refrigeration system is completely safe. Even on the synthetic blends, there's opportunity for leaks and so we did talk about CO2, and as a group we decided that ammonia was probably our best bet.
Did you check with Simcoe? Or is that the one you're talking about, the CO2?
Simcoe was probably the first one to bring it forward. They own a lot of the proprietary material for it. Our consultant, is a third party, and they work with Simcoe as well. They work with Simcoe. They work with all the ice plant manufacturers.
Because the word I'm getting is, like I said, it's ammonia is probably one of the worst ones to be going with right now. And like I said, DFIR just changed to CO2, so you wouldn't be the first one in the region to try it out. But I think we should. My opinion is we should look at this really close before we say yes on this ammonia. Do a little more checking and thinking, and it's my opinion. I just think it's probably not the right one to be going with.
I would say one thing to keep in mind is we're on a little bit of a timeline to try to get this information out back to the design team as soon as possible. The lead time on any of these components for the ammonia system, the lead time is about 30 weeks on the components that we're going to need. And then on a synthetic blend system, the lead time would be 40 weeks. I'm not sure on the CO2 system how long the lead time is for those components. I'm guessing it's probably right in that same neighborhood, that 30 to 40 weeks. So we got to be mindful. We want to make sure that to stay on target of our schedule, we want to get this decision made, as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you.
We also want to make sure we do the correct thing.
Absolutely.
I think Tanner has.
Yeah, if I can chime in and add to a little bit what Jeremy was saying. Thank you for bringing up your concern about the ammonia system. One of the things, along with what Jeremy was saying, that's been driving us a little bit towards the ammonia system is synthetic is on its way out. We don't know when that's going to be, just due to environmental reasons and energy efficiency. So we know synthetic is kind of has a short window of life before they start having to replace those systems
and upgrade their systems
from synthetic. And then regarding CO2, like you said, CO2 is a good new option that's come out, relatively efficient. Again, there's some unknowns with it, being that it is a little bit newer. We know, I think we had a conversation recently with the RELF, and it sounds like they might be going back to ammonia, if I remember correctly. But there are dangers with all the systems, like Jeremy had said. But we work closely with our ICE consultants and the rest of our consultants and the local code official to make sure that we take the proper steps to ensure that the space is as safe as we can make it, with the vestibules, with the systems. But yeah, as of right now, CO2 is a little newer, is more expensive, is an option we can look into. But what we found is many rinks are starting to go back to ammonia for its efficiency, and it's a natural occurring gas that can be reused pretty well with these systems and lower energy costs for the future. And the equipment that's used for it has a longer lifespan as well, just due to the materials that are used.
Okay, thank you, Tanner. Karen, if you would, please.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but when we were discussing the differences between ammonia and CO2, didn't CO2 have some limitations as far as in what capacity that we wanted to use the arena in? Where weren't they more focused on like seasonal arenas as opposed to a year-round, which is what we would be striving for?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Karen. Yeah, one of the limitations on the CO2 plants is you get into the warmer months, they start really dropping off in their efficiency. And so that was another reason we were leaning towards the ammonia system, is knowing that if we're planning to keep ice on through June, which we historically have for the last few years, and then putting it back on again in September and the warmer falls that we've been having, we're going to have a lot more efficiency and could have some issues with the CO2 plant if we're running it in those warmer seasons. It just can't keep up with the humidity and the warmer temperatures.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or discussion on Mr. Pukshavinsky, please?
Thank you. Jeremy, have we done any cost-benefit analysis between option 2 and option 3? Seems like option 3, yeah, we're spending a little bit more up front, but long-term, it just, to me, seems like that is going to save the city money, over a couple of decades.
We are working on it. Like I said, this all kind of came to fruition on Thursday, and so we haven't had a chance to really put together a good cost-benefit analysis on, how much would it cost to replace the existing system as we know it right now versus what does it look like for upsizing this system and boring a line underneath. And so we don't have that information to share yet. With the recommendation of the one with option 2, with the add alternate of option 3, gives us that time. It gives JLG direction to start working, but then it also gives us time to do our homework and figure out what that looks like, and if it makes sense on paper once we have those details and option 3 comes in and it's in our budget and where we need it to be, then that makes a lot of sense. If it's not, then we go with option 2. And
Sure. I think, when do you think that'll be done?
hopefully in the next couple weeks here.
Okay. But we need to make a decision on option 2 or option 3 before then?
Right, and so, yeah, when the recommendation would be to go with option 2 with an add alternate for the bid, so that they would design it for option 2 with an alternate bid of option 3. We'd put them both out to bid, and then we'd see what the numbers came back like.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Olsted.
Yeah, quickly, just, I pulled the schedule up just kind of to highlight, I think, to drive the point home that Jeremy's making. If we request the add alternate bid, the ICE bid package needs to get out by the middle part of September. And we would receive bids back by somewhere near the end of October. In that process of having the add alternate, really, we could do fact gathering and cost benefit analysis all the way until the bids came back in October, and that would be really our decision point. So by doing it the way Jeremy's suggesting, we're giving ourselves a little time to continue gathering those facts on the cost benefit of that blue line connection.
Okay, so we're not choosing option 2 or option 3. We're saying whether we just want to request a bid for option 2 and that's it, or if we want to say we want bids for this option and this option.
Correct.
Okay.
And we need that decision ideally by next week.
Okay.
In the preferred ICE plant, the ammonia, CO2, or synthetic option. That'll allow B32 and JLG to finish design, put the project out to bid, and then we'll get all those results back and be able to make a more informed decision with true costs at that time.
But if we wanted to go with just option 2, like say we just didn't even want to entertain option 3, we'd probably save a little bit of money up front, because then JLG wouldn't even need to, scope that out.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I don't think between the two options, as far on the design side, if we go with option 2, the only upsizing, the only additional design will be just on the upsizing of the components. I don't think it really doesn't really change the layout of the room at all. Maybe they give it a little bit more space to add a third compressor or something like that, but it shouldn't add a whole lot on the design side. Just basically getting the price difference between a 90-ton and a 160-ton unit.
Okay. I mean, for me, I think option 3 is just going to be the way to go.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. As Mr. King said, we sat through a bunch of meetings and had some discussion, and I was kind of pushing more the option 3 myself, just for longevity. I'll be honest, I didn't want to be 10 years down the road and someone say, well, why did you guys think of this when you did the project back 10 years ago? I think looking at that option, having them do the cost of it, I think is the best way to go, so that we can make that decision, and so that we can make sure that we are going to look to the future, and what, maybe Blue Line Club, maybe there's a change there, but maybe there's not, but we never know. So as long as we look at it and discuss it and talk about what's the best benefit long-term for the city, I think that's what we need to do. So.
And something I'd like to add for option 3 for all of your consideration is for option 3 to save the city money. You would want to do the updates to the Blue Line Club within the first 5 years for it to truly save money. After 5 years, it will become a wash, or depending on how long you wait, might not. Just wanted you all to have that information to help inform your decision for when you look at option 3.
Mr. Helms?
Yeah, I just wanted to say again, the reason I threw Simcoe out there is because they're the best there is in the business as far as ice arenas. And I think they'd have probably some really good knowledge. Whether they push the CO2 or not, that's up to them, I guess. But I still think that that's somebody that we should be talking with. It's like the Cadillac and the Ford, you know. It's they're the best there is out there. So. And
even with the ammonia system, I'm pretty sure Simcoe will have an opportunity to bid that. I believe. I think I think Simcoe does CO2, ammonia, and synthetic. So they'll have an opportunity, even with, if we went with the ammonia, they'll still have an opportunity to be part of the project.
Thank you. I'm curious about the arenas that are reverting from CO2 back to ammonia. Is there any more information on that, or any lessons learned from other?
I think it all boils down to reliability and energy efficiency. I think I can give you a list. I think some of the NHL rinks that probably have higher budgets and can replace their systems, more often were trending towards the CO2, and as they started to have more breakdowns and started kind of working the bugs out of the system, realized that maybe it wasn't exactly what they were looking for. Besides Thief River, I don't know. I could look at my list here. They gave me a list of breakdown of different arenas and what kind of systems they have, and I could look quickly here to see if there's any smaller communities that have CO2. I'm not seeing any on here. The smaller communities anyway.
Did you check with Thief River to ask them why they went with CO2?
I have not chatted with, not
ammonia?
this year. Last year when we were kind of starting working on this project, I talked with the salesman from Simcoe. He was down here doing a site visit on the VFW arena, and we chatted a little bit about it at that time. But that was about the extent of that we've gone with that.
Yes. Go ahead, Tammy.
Thank you. I won't pretend to know a lot about ice arenas and refrigeration systems, but I am safe to assume this is very OSHA regulated. I mean, and there's lots of regulations, and as far as they're not going to just let you throw ammonia in, and
Right.
there's a lot of it's very tight.
Yeah, it would be up to code and
So
standards.
I think we need to trust, the steering committee and the people who have done the research more than I have. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Any other comments or questions for Mr. King? Okay, I see none. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 4, and I think we have 2 guests here with us today. A legislative update from Senator Mark Johnson and Representative Steve Gander. So,
Want to sit at the table?
please come ahead. Yeah, come forward, guys.
Thank you.
Turn your mic on.
Your mic's on. Somebody's in my chair over there.
Feels good.
That's your chair.
You look natural here, Representative.
Thank you, sir.
You're in your element.
I'm in the lower house, so I got to try harder.
I'm sure it would be easier to get along with here, too.
Oh, yeah.
How would you like to go about this?
Well, why don't we have Representative Gander kick us off with an update, and we'll just have an open discussion.
Awesome.
Very good, Mark, and you can fill in the blanks, Senator Johnson. So we wrapped up our session, as you all know, on the 19th of May. Statutorily, we had to be done. Then we had to go back for a special session of a one-day voting on about 14 items. It could have gone the full 24-hour cycle, but we got it done pretty well. I was a little uneasy because the first item of 14 took 4 hours. Now you do the math, and 14 times 4, it was going to be really bad. But we actually did knock it out in pretty good time on that one-day special session. Thanks to the work of Senator Johnson as Republican leader, and so the way they brought it together, they had a Democrat and a Republican from the House and a Democrat and a Republican from the Senate, and the governor had some staffers there, and then they went to work hammering out a final bill, a series of bills that was the product of all the work that we had done through the whole session. They brought them together, and if anyone has a concern, one of the concerns we hear all the time is, wait a minute, our Minnesota Constitution requires a single item for a single bill. How can you do this big fat omnibus thing? But I was so proud of the work that they did because it came out, let's say Human Services had Human Services Finance, Human Services Policy. So down the road it went. So we had single item, single bill, trying to abide by the Constitution. So I'm going to just go back through. So we were in a tight budget situation, 23-24. We came out of an $18 billion surplus a couple of years earlier. We went to a projected $6 billion deficit in the out years. We raised taxes by $10 billion. That's a total swing of about $34 billion. We were able to cut spending and not raising taxes on families, we could say. The cannabis tax went up. We didn't like that so much, but it did. It hadn't even rolled out yet, but the tax amount was increased by 50%. So we had the largest spending cut year over year in Minnesota history in this one session. It was a great outcome. I have some bad news and then some good news. Bad news is the bonding for our South End water tower went nowhere. But that's because all the bonding bills that were brought together, we were told we may have room for some local bonding bills to come through, but at the 11th hour, the word was all the local bonding bills were kicked out. We were going for a sales tax exemption on our park project, and it was looking really good. And then at the end, it turns out all of the sales tax exemptions, and I talked to the chair multiple times. I harassed him multiple times about our project, and he's, well, I'm watching, but he had to reject them all, or the committee, because it was just too high a dollar amount. It was like almost a record amount of sales tax exemptions that were requested. So the cannabis tax, we did, it's the only tax that went up. We got a 50% increase, and then some fees went up, which we don't like. Good news. We did preserve LGA, local government aid, and county program aid. As we all know, East Grand Forks needs that segment coming into our budget every year to really not overload our local taxpayers. And we were in kind of good conversation through the session, watching that very closely, and we're able to preserve that, not having a cut. That's a big deal. We retained the Philando Castile Memorial Training Fund for police officers. Chief Hedlund alerted me to this early on in the session. Hey, keep an eye on this. Some folks wanted to cut it down to $1 million. I'm not going to say who, but others of us were favoring more like $6 million. We were able to keep it at $5.5 million statewide dollars for training, which we use heavily for our local police officers. We were trying not to shift costs to cities and counties. There was an effort that would have been about a 16% shift to counties on some of our social spending. We were able to zero that back out again and not do that shift. We blocked an effort to override local zoning ordinances. They're trying to find ways to do more affordable housing, and one of the tricks they had up their sleeve was to maybe usurp all local zoning ordinances, and you could put any size house in any size district anywhere you wanted. It would have been a shambles. Having cut my teeth on the Planning Commission 100 years ago, I know that's got to be a local issue. I will never, ever, ever support that being a state issue. We would surely mess it up coming out of St. Paul. Teacher retirement, we had a really good teacher retirement program until just recently, and then it dropped off like a cliff. It was going to be like 7, 8, 9 years till the next group of teachers could retire. We're really going for 30 and 60. We took a big step toward that, and we're going to try to keep finding the funding to get a genuine 30 and 60, meaning you've taught for 30 years, you're at least 60 years of age. When I was a kid in school, Minnesota teachers we're coming in here in good numbers because we had great wages, great benefits. Other states have upped their game. We've actually lowered ours. We're going to do better. And so that's very, very important. And thanks to the teachers that we gathered in here. Mark, I know you helped set that, Mr. Mayor, you helped set that up. And it was a good gathering. We had to really raise my awareness of that issue and then bring it back down there. Social programs, we were able to slow the growth in social spending, guided by the objective of continuing to care for those least able to care for themselves. You know, we're not taking the machete or the chainsaw or any of that. We're being really intentional, really surgical. So older folks, people with disabilities, and children, and we've been able to find savings in other areas. This whole bringing back the work requirement for welfare benefits is going to be helpful also to preserve the benefits to those who need them the most while finding some savings elsewhere. We ended, as you probably heard, subsidized health insurance coverage for adults, undocumented immigrants, illegal aliens. So no longer do the adults of undocumented immigrants receive subsidized health care. The kids continue on, and that's a $57 million savings over the next 2 years. So that's real money. And that's what I had, Senator.
You took my notes, I guess. That was everything I had. You did a wonderful job. So it's been, first of all, I just want to say thank you for the invitation to come out here. Really appreciate you reaching out. This is really an opportunity for us to kind of explain what we saw this last session down in St. Paul, but also for you to ask some questions. And then also just kind of put on our radar some of the issues that are going to be coming up here in this next session coming up. But I think, you know, Representative Gander really did a good job of running down the main points that have been down St. Paul this last session. It's been a real joy to have him join the team and be part of that. Somebody that knows local government so well has been able to really kind of emphasize some of the points that we need to be hearing about down there. I do want to give a couple of quick shout outs to Chief Hedlund, your team. We had that tragic assassination down in St. Paul, and the first call that I did that morning was over to your department, and they were on it like crazy and came over to the house, and we had enforcement officials over there between our two places making sure everything was okay, although we weren't in trouble or anything in there. They just kind of gave some safety, and really appreciate what you did and the telephone calls that we had after that as well too. And so I just really appreciate the work that you guys are doing here in town as well. With that, you know, I think you hit most of the points. They're really, you know, there's some high-level things that really don't impact state government. Some of the healthcare issues that have been going on, some of the taxes that we're debating about. But I think overall, you know, I think you hit it on the head. So I think we could move to questions, and that'd be a great place to be.
Okay, Mayor Olsted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Representative Gander and Senator Johnson. Of course, on the agenda tonight, we talked about marijuana, cannabis. Is there any way we can really help in what we need to gather to get back that 20% that we lost in the sales tax this year at the end of the 11th hour?
You want to hit that?
Absolutely. If you would like, I think it would be helpful for us to see from a municipality of 9,200 people what are kind of estimated costs of implementing this. Even how many meetings did we have, how much time was spent creating the map, and then on the enforcement side going forward, as we qualify these vendors and as we police these vendors and as we deal with some higher rates of whatever that might bring. If you could bring in what you really think the costs are to carry this out, probably what you've incurred up to this point, and maybe on an annualized basis. The first year it'll be more, maybe it'll become a little less as it's all up and running. But I think we should see what those costs are and bring them back to the folks that stole that money. It's awful that really you raised the tax, not you, by 50% and then took it all from the cities. That's outrageous. And whatever extra cost does the state have organizing this? It's all going to fall on counties and cities. So by all means, if you can flesh that out and put it on a sheet to show us what your actual cost, you know, up to now, maybe year one, year two, we'll bring it back and say, okay, we're not going to do this. Another unfunded mandate, not going to do that. That's what I'd like to see.
Well, I think with us only having 2, we can look at leaving City Moorhead. The people are unlimited, how many they can have there. I can't imagine what it's going to cost their force to keep track of everything, make sure everything's okay, just in other things that come with it. So I think we can look at what the costs are and what the costs are in our first year. We probably won't know until closer to the beginning of the year that they'll be starting. So, but I think it's something we need to work on. Can I say anything?
All right. Any other questions? Mr. Helms?
Yeah, gentlemen, I was just wondering, is there anything you can do about insurance on the state level? Insurances are just getting absolutely crazy.
You're talking on the private side, or you're talking?
Liabilities and, like for businesses, for instance, it's just going crazy on, it goes up every year 20%, Is there anything we can do to try and put a cap on that or anything, or?
Yeah, I think one of the big issues that we've had, and we've seen this all across the insurance industry, whether it's property casual or homeowners insurance, or even within municipalities, is just the rising costs of your underlying both labor and also materials. And so now we're seeing the insurance companies starting to catch up. When you look at the insurance companies' profit and loss, they've been going through some pretty tough times over the last couple of weeks. I'm not saying we feel sorry for the insurance, but they have been going through some pretty tough times here as that gap is really flipped, and now they're trying to pay these costs. Well, now they've switched it over so that we're picking up the increase on that. So we've seen it all over the place. I don't know what the solution is. I think that inflationary aspect is starting to fall a little bit. We've seen that in some of the bidding that's going on across the state. So hopefully that'll be help on that one as well. But like you say, I mean, there isn't a silver bullet for that one to really reduce the cost right now. Public safety is one that has really been tied to it, especially down in Twin Cities area, where you're seeing a lot of the property robberies and things like that have been going on, property damage down there. That's one thing that's built into our Minnesota pricing as well too. So that's something that we can get a handle on, maybe. We'll see what happens there. But really, that's a small part of what the overall cost is.
You recall, and you probably know the detail of this better than I do, Senator Johnson. We do a thing in Minnesota called reinsurance. And I want to say, is it some number like $500 million or some number? What happens with that is, so your normal health insurance carriers, they're going to have some experience with losses and claims they've had to pay out. And they do have some extraordinary losses and high claim amounts. So we bring in reinsurance from the state. So state dollars are allocated to this reinsurance to buy down that cost so that the final end user premium is less. And we've done it kind of as a Band-Aid every biennium. We just approved it again this year, right?
Yep, this year.
I can't remember what the dollar, it's a ton of money that we put into reinsurance. It was a big debate. So were we going to do this, or the reinsurance? And it got put in just so that the final end user out there in that market for insurance, over here you have the public insurance market and the private, so that this group over here doesn't have unrealistic premiums to pay. That's why that reinsurance dollar comes in over the top. So we are spending a lot of your money statewide in reinsurance to try to hold the line on some of those premium increases.
Well, I could ask a question. Mine would be related to housing, and the availability and the affordability of housing continues to be a challenge for a lot of folks here. And as we look to attract additional employers, the availability of the housing for the workforce seems to be a bit of a push and a pull. Like there's some struggles there. Wondering if you two gentlemen have any success stories that you've learned from other areas around Minnesota, or if there's certain programs that we should be looking into?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's one of the three legs of the stool that is always, I think, holding back Minnesota is really the employees, all the daycare, and then also housing for them. So if you're trying to recruit in individuals, the first question they ask is housing. Can we find that? Can we not? And so Northwest Minnesota, that's something that's been a big part of, our community is trying to figure out initiatives for that. Former Representative Dan Fabian from Roseau area put together a program there with funding that we've put some money into that's been very successful in rural Minnesota, is trying to buy down some of the infrastructure costs so that when you're developing lots and different things like that, that we can step in and help with some grants to cities and do that to help alleviate some of those costs and make those lots more affordable for the end user of that eventually. That one is one that is kind of discretionary funding, depends on what the budget looks like. In 2023, we put in a significant number of dollars into that program. It was used up relatively quick. But then, as budgets got tighter, that program didn't receive the same funding this last year as it should have. But that's been a really good program. The problem that we've had too is that the Department of Housing, I forget the title for that, but their commissioners really struggling getting dollars out. We've got a number of programs that are housed underneath that, but she's more focused on homelessness, which ends up being more Ramsey and Hennepin County. And they forget a lot that there's more to the state than Ramsey and Hennepin County. And so we are continually pushing them to, hey, how can we be using these dollars in developing the economy in places like East Grand Forks or, up in Kitson County or wherever it might be, how do we get those dollars out? And there just doesn't seem to be much interest in that right now. And so we'll continue to work on that. That's a big push. Representative Gander and myself will be looking at it right now. But this next session will not be a budget session like the last one was. We might have a supplemental budget depending on what the revenues coming in look like and where we're sitting on cash. But that's something that we're always very interested in, making sure that we figure out something for it. So if you've got ideas, let us know. We're happy to take input on that.
When I was up in Thief River Falls for the ribbon cutting for that child care center, we had folks from DigiKey there, and of course they're very, very interested in growing their job market. And they see the same impediments that we do. It's child care and it's housing. So entry-level workforce housing. And I was thinking back to after the flood, we had like a $10,000 incentive that if you built a house and it was no income restriction and it was a forgivable loan, I think if you owned it for 5 or 10 years, this would be forgiven. And the neat thing about not having it be income-based is if you have someone in a 1,000 or 1,200 square foot home and they go ahead and do a bigger home, that's a step up where they go here and that home comes into the market as an entry-level affordable home for someone. So I think, honestly, and it seemed to incentivize a lot of people to go ahead and build. If we could come up with a pool of funds that was even, say, $10,000 per individual that would do a startup and build a home, whether they are first-time homeowners or in an existing home, I think we could start to get the dominoes to tip and some affordable homes coming into the market.
Thank you. Any other questions for Senator Johnson or Representative Gander? Council members or staff as well?
I just have a comment, talking about getting affordable housing back on the market. After the flood, you mentioned the flood of '97, Senator Wellstone seen how well that the prison system worked with the communities. They started a program called the Institutional Community Work Crew. They would rent space from county jails who at the time were having terrible times with their budgets, and they would move prisoners out that were ready to go on work release and put them into the community with a leader that would take them out and build houses in the community. It got shut down by the lobbyists because they were competing unfairly with contractors. The prisoners could make a maximum of $1.50 an hour, and that went towards their kiddies to buy candy bars or whatever they got in the jail system. The argument was the Institutional Community Work Crew was not building houses the same as the regular contractors were. but it got voted down because they could if they wanted to. And I think that was ridiculous. The recidivism rate for the prison system went from like 66% down to 17% after participation in the program, which in itself saved the state of Minnesota millions and millions of dollars. So, you know, it's a sad situation because the availability of housing was there. People that needed the housing had to go to classes to learn how to live in a house, how to make the payments, and how to afford one. So it was a sad day when they shut the program down, but it'd be something I'd appreciate if you guys would at least look at.
What was the name of that program?
Institutional Community Work Group.
Okay.
They eliminated it because it made sense.
Aren't they doing that with, they did that with office equipment? They used to do that where they
Used to build it?
Yeah, they used
down
to build
like Faribault
furniture.
or something
Yeah.
like that, still
I
water.
think so. I don't know if they still do that, but they did, I think, believe they did that.
Interesting. Very good. So one question for you guys. What the Representative Gander and I need to do to get, what kind of funding do we need to get to East Grand Forks for sidewalk on 10th?
Sidewalk on 10th.
Right along across the Hartsville there?
The coulee?
Yeah. How many times have we talked about that, Nancy? A couple?
I would love one.
Yeah.
You see me walking on it
Oh, yeah.
every day, so.
Okay, just put a bug in your ear. We're happy to help.
Okay.
If we all work together.
$600 million in LGA.
That's all it takes?
That would
All right.
All right.
We'll put that in your name then.
Yeah, right.
Make that work.
Okay.
Good. Thank you so much.
Yes.
For the
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, let's move on to item number 5 then. Preliminary budget discussion. Mr. Huttunen and Ms. Anderson.
I had to do some cool soccer. See you guys. Yeah. See you.
All right, thank you, Mr. President, council members. Karla is passing out some updated budget sheets, a few things to walk through this evening. The first page that she's got is kind of an updated revenue and expenditure summary for the general fund for 2026. This is pretty similar to what we walked through in the presentation last week. You can see there's a few numbers that have been refined. Maybe to expand just a little more thoroughly, the 3% levy shown on the top right hand of the page, that is kind of a placeholder as a starting point for a proposed increase for next year at a value of $214,139. And then with all of the revenues and expenditures accounted for, the remaining deficit we're showing is $798,789. That number last week when we looked at it was $862,000. But the combination of those two, add $214,139 plus that deficit, that's going to come up with the total increase we would need to account for going into 2026. And that number last week I said was 15%. It's probably right around that area, 14 and change.
14 and a half, yep.
So we would, as we walk through this, we would certainly, hopefully you've all had a chance to look at it and think about things since the presentation last week. Take any direction, questions, thoughts on how you want to see us proceed with that. And then the following pages, I'm going to let Karla walk through, but those are summary pages of enterprise funds for 2026.
Okay, so first on here is stormwater operations, and you'll see what we did actually for 2023 and 2024. I also added a line on there that a profit or loss. So in 2023, we collected $134,908 more than we spent. 2024, we spent $95,000 more. 2025, we budgeted a negative $38,37. And where we are today in 2026, we have budgeted $19,456,000 loss. The other thing that goes in the stormwater is that if you look in the middle, it's flood walls, flood fight, transfer, other department expenditure type. And part of that loss in 2024 was that we collected from a flood in 2022 that we had to share with Water and Light for their expenses for the flood. So we did get reimbursed from FEMA, and we also get, if it's not a federal disaster, we do get approved 75% from the state emergency management. So that actually, if you look at that, that does bring that loss down in 2024. Any questions of stormwater?
Karla, the cash balance down there at the bottom
Oh, yes.
is 1.4 million.
Yes.
And then on average, what do we spend out of this account?
If you look under the expenditures, it's 800, about 2024 it was 876, but it's probably closer to $750,000.
Okay. What would be like would the cash balance essentially be the reserves for this
Yes,
specific account?
more or less, yes.
Sure.
So that would be you looking at 50%.
Yeah.
Because they say either of the revenues or of the expenses, but we kind of look in between, it's at 50% there.
Okay. The cash balance is the reserve. That's the 1.4 million?
Yes.
And then annually, we spend 800 or so?
Yeah. The other hard thing on here is that sometimes we have, equipment doesn't really fall in here because it's under assets. So sometimes if we have a large project, then it actually doesn't fall under expenses because it's an asset. So that would lower our cash balance, but it's not on our profit and loss.
Sure. Like a capital investment,
Correct.
Pump or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we haven't had a lot of that. I know we're working right now on a grant with, out in the industrial park, but that's a grant that we're working on. We got at $87,000. So we're looking at to see what kind of project we could do and what the cost is, so.
What's your thought on this cash balance? Does this feel right for this account? Is it too high, too low?
No, I would suggest that we, keep it at least that, because we do have projects, repairs that come through, and that we'd like to have a cash balance to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's look at sewer operations. If you look, 2023 actual, 2024 actual, we had a negative 416,000 in 2023. We had 916,000 in 2024. We budgeted 977,000 in 2025, and right now in 2026 we're at 859,000. The large thing that actually happens in our sewer, and I know we talked about it when we met with Grand Forks, is the COSA. So we used to budget like 300,000, and then what happened is we spent 700,000. So if you look under expenditure under sewer treatment lagoon, in 2023 actually we had 350, but in 2024 we had 760,000. And then in 2025 we budgeted 724, and this year budgeting 654. So that, and they explain that has to do with the biosolids in the water we're sending to Grand Forks, which I believe Todd said is mainly dirt. So I know Jason and them are, his crew is looking at that. We also need to look at if we know what's going on there, do we impute fines in it, or what we're going to do, because that's really what's throwing us off. At 300,000 is a variable. We used to have an issue more with rainwater, which we fixed that. So this really has to do with those industrial biosolids that we ship over, and they have to take longer to treat them. So that's the big thing to look at, the sewer. The cash balance is 1.7 on that. To me, it's a little low to have in our cash balance or fund balance. I know I have a spreadsheet that I've looked at, and we have to be at least at 35%. And so we really need to get a handle on what, how much we're sending over that extra biosolids, and probably need to look at also raising rates. And I know we've talked about, we went through that in garbage and refuse, that, do we look at doing that a little bit every year instead of one big time? So that would be something that we need to discuss.
So we looked at like targeted rates, that would be higher for the dirty sites that are that are causing this cost increase.
And that's what we need to do.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, because it's really not fair to the normal consumer to pay for those costs that they're sending over.
Yeah, like a homeowner
Yeah,
shouldn't have
right.
the cost increase that an industrial
right,
site causes,
right.
right? Yeah.
Some of the costs from previous years were from our EQ basin and issues with flooding when water was up high, and some of the solids TSS that we'd have from that. We've since then made some improvements to it and don't really have that problem anymore. So we've kind of targeted a few different places in our industrial park. We're looking at putting in testing manholes so we're able to target the ones that are the problem. We've kind of narrowed it down to just a few. So we're working right now with WSN and trying to figure out a solution there as far as testing and then applying fees as appropriate to those users. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions on the sewer? Okay, if you look at refuse, which I know we talked about, and we did raise the residential fees, because if you look at the bottom, profit and loss in 2023 was $22,000, in 2024 actual was $140,000. 2025 we budgeted for $248,000 loss, and right now we're at $161 for 2026. So this does include the increases we did for residential starting July 1st, and then again next July 1st. So we guess as much as possible. We started looking at commercial rates, but we have not came up with how we're going to do that. But that would be something that we need to look at. We need to get the cash balance up, and we also need to get rid of that loss.
Yeah. Mayor Olsted, did you have a comment?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
So, I mean, with these other ones, we're talking about maybe the sewer needs to go up, and then stormwater maybe is in a good spot. And one's at 50-some%, one's at 59% for the sewer operations. This cash balance is at 2%. So over the years, as we went from $22,000 loss, all of a sudden we jump up and keep jumping and then back down a little bit. I mean, when's the trigger that we needed to be talked to about this and have a discussion with these balances so that we can, and the council can plan for it, instead of having to go back and go, okay, in 10 years, are we actually going to get back where we're comfortable and where we should be at?
Are you talking about a certain fund?
Yeah, I'm talking with refuse collection.
Okay, and I know, the discussion, that did come up with the discussion, and we've been talking for 2 years, since 2023, they were talking about raising rates, and it just never went anywhere.
As a director of finance, would you not sit down and go, okay, city administrator, we need to bring this to council?
Yeah.
We need to have a discussion.
Yep, we do. We were aware of it, and when we talked about helping, I offered my services to Public Works, and they said they were working on it.
So we're going to have to fix commercial refuse, which I understand. I've talked to Jason about it. We've had meetings. Get it. There's going to have to be a really ouch from these commercial people once they see what we really truly need to be charging.
Right, and what we have looked at that, Brianna and I have, we did on the spreadsheet that we looked at all the customers we have in certain areas. We put into that spreadsheet just at the rates what Grand Forks is doing, and just to at least get where Grand Forks is, and we haven't gone any farther on that. So we do need to do that.
But I think, I'll go back to it. Stormwater, you're at a little over 50%. The other one's 58.9%. I mean, this is at 2%. I mean, this should have been done many years ago. It should have been brought up, should have been brought to the attention of the city administrator back 10 years ago, whatever.
I believe it was. I know Megan was in that office, and I know Megan and I have discussed, and that has been brought up.
It should have came to the city council to have a discussion on it and went through, because this is not good.
No.
I mean, what if we had an issue, we had to go out and buy something or do whatever? I mean, we're losing money every month, and now we're not at the end of the year, and we have a $27,000 balance in here. It's going to be negative before the end of the year.
Well, and I did look to see what we collect from, because Water and Light, we don't collect the money right away. We get a check a few months, it's behind a month. And so I did check with Water and Light to see where we're at and where the check is where the check is. So we'll probably be gaining a little bit more every month, but no, not enough to where we should be. No.
Should have $400,000 or $500,000 in this account.
Right, and we also did invest in a garbage truck, so we're making payments for that for the next 9 years on a commercial.
Closer to 6 or almost at 6.5. But, I mean, this is not good. I mean, this is something that we have to figure out, because I don't need to go back to the commercial people and say, guess what, you're being 1,000% increase. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Any other questions for Mr. Huttunen or Ms. Anderson? I got a question. Mr. Pukshavinsky.
Thank you. So right now, we're at probably a 15% increase? Yeah?
Yeah, call it that, 14.5, 15%.
Okay.
Yep,
And we did 3% last year?
correct.
Yes.
And what did we do the year before?
5%.
5%?
Yep.
Okay.
And we did look at the average. The average was about 6.5 over the last, 20 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. If we'd have done it, if it would have, that was the average between going up 25, going -1, it was like 6.5.
So what do we think we're actually going to end at this year?
That's a great question. I don't know that, the variables being cost of personnel, wages, and health insurance, still a large unknown. It's hard to be able to say exactly where that ends up.
I mean, 10%, 8%?
Right.
Is there a rough estimate?
I'd like to say 6 to 8%
Yeah.
as a goal. I don't think I could recommend anything lower than that. And to be able to sort of create a level year over year, in light of what Karla shared, that about a 6.5% is kind of an average across the board. I think that truly is at the level of service and operation that we provide today. I think that is kind of the level required increase each year to keep us level. You look at our average cost of personnel, that runs about a 5% increase each year. Mm-hmm. And so anything lower than that, we're taking a step backwards that's at some point in the future going to need to be made up for.
Yeah. I guess I talked about this with the mayor, and maybe the mayor talked to you about it, that we need to stop having this, holy moly, what are we going to do every August? Mm-hmm. There's got to be a better way to go about this budgeting process and have some sort of projection year over years that we can say that, okay, this, we're going to see increases here, here, and here. We know they're coming, right? So I would much rather have done 5% last year and spread that out for our residents in the community versus, that small increase last year, and now we've got a big spike this year, and we don't know what we're going to do next year. Right. So I would challenge that we, it's too late this year, but for next year's budget, can we come and have, a projection of the next 3 to 5 years of what we think that the levy's going to be realistically, right? Because right now we set it at 15%. But I'd like to see, what do we think we need to set it at every December moving forward so that is just steady? Because right now, our residents don't know what it's going to be, and they need to budget for that for next year. And when we're going up like this and then down and then up, that's so hard for them to try and get ahead in life. So I think having that steady, if we can make that promise to our residents that says, the cost of things go up and we need to plan for that in our budget, but our promise to you guys is that, 5 to 6% every year, please budget for that. I think that would be much better than going from 3 to 8% and then, what's going to be next year. So that'd be my challenge for next year. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or discussion? Okay, I see none. All right, that takes us to the end of the agenda then. Unless there's anything else, we'd be looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Helms. Second by Riepel. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. Motion passes. Meeting is closed.